Welcome to USMNT Weekly Total Soccer Show's regular series on the men's national team that happens every 7 days. It's in the title. Today, we're combining USMNT Weekly with another of our favourite episode formats, Take It or Leave It. We're taking your hot takes on the national team, and we'll either take them or leave them. On this episode, we're discussing Gio Reyna World Cup aftershocks, the team's skill set issues, and the need for an entirely new centre-back group. Ooh, my name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, your friend, my friend, the Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. It's meant to be a lighter show. When put in that context, as you just successfully did, and quite well, that's why you're the host, it does take on much more serious ramifications. I'm very excited to solve some of these takes.
Are you feeling serious today, or are you feeling silly today?
I wasn't, but now I'm going to go put on my business shirt so that we know it's time to go. It's the tuxedo shirt.
Yes. You've got several, right? In case one's in the wash.
Of course, always.
Yeah, very good. Also joining us, Joe Lowry. Hello, Joe.
Hey, fellas. I'm realizing after the introduction, which I'm taking, the introduction, by the way, professionally done, well executed from top to bottom, taking that. I'm realizing that Gio Reyna has really put to the test the old expression that any press is good press. I think Gio has pretty much stretched that line as thin as one can in his position at the moment. So, there's that.
Interesting.
In a way, he remains like a thing you have to talk about. So I guess that press is sort of helping him. Maybe just not in the way that he would prefer or was intended.
There we go. All right, we'll get to that hot take and many others very shortly. Before we get there, Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Don't think I've mentioned it on this feed before, but we have bonus content, TSS Plus, where you'll get bonus episodes, bonus video content, and, of course, access to our Discord server, where all the cool kids are hanging out, if you so please. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, the best way to support this here endeavour. A please and a thank you. Also, if you want to see our lovely visages, we're on the YouTubes. Go check out our YouTube channel as well. Smash like and subscribe. I think that's what the kids say.
Did you feel good when you said that?
Did you feel good hearing it?
Yes.
I mean, I audibly said oof, so there you go.
Also yes. Sweet. Same page.
I think my youngest child was probably about 3 when she first started saying smash the like button, which says a lot about my parenting skills. I think.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Indeed. All right, let's get to our USMNT Take It or Leave It. We're going to go for Troy One Kenobi's take first off. The USMNT will never get to a World Cup semi-final. Oh, boy. The infrastructure of US soccer prevents the team from ever winning anything of note. Until pay-for-play goes away, this will continue. Now, Taylor, I get the sentiment of Mr. or Miss One Kenobi's take here, but my overarching thought here is that if South Korea can get to a semi-final in a home tournament, why the heck can't the United States?
It's a fair question. Size of the country might be a part of that one, but for that reason and others, Ryan, I am leaving this one because, first of all, never is an absolute. I'm never going to say never because you never know what could happen. And hopefully the World Cup continues on long enough that the U.S. can eventually make a semifinal. I'm also leaving this because I just did that interview with Ira Jersey, which you can find in the feed, where we talked about founding a lower-level club, how you finance it, how you go about making it happen and making the team successful. And a big point he raised in that interview was that people want to get rid of pay-to-play. There are legitimate reasons to want to get rid of pay-to-play, but there has to be some sort of alternative because at some point someone is going to pay something. And so you have to find a way to make that work. So I don't think pay-to-play is necessarily the issue. I think the issue is not having alternatives, not having other ways of going about finding new talents and developing players. And to his point, Ira's, having semi-professional leagues would be a good sort of like half measure or stopgap measure until we can find other solutions, because ultimately there's never going to be a perfect solution to this one, a perfect system with a country the size of the United States where you have population disparity, ethnic disparity. It's just really difficult. Wealth disparity, obviously. It's really difficult to have a one-size-fits-all approach to American soccer. Ultimately, I think the best-case scenario is to have a very good system that is still going to have cracks. Ideally, those cracks are just smaller, and admittedly, right now, they are quite large. So I think there are solutions to the perceived problems of talent development and of the national team as a whole, but I don't think the existence of pay-to-play is necessarily the thing that will keep the United States from making a semifinal.
Yeah, Taylor, I think you're absolutely on a nail on the head stuff with all of that. I think there are the way that I've been thinking about this is there are more barriers to playing soccer in the United States than in the great men's soccer countries, right? I think that's part of what you're getting at. Before you even get into a team environment, there are a lack of fields close to people, right? There's a lack of culture in most places in the U.S. that features soccer as a dominant activity or a dominant sport compared to other sports, let alone all the other ways to spend your time. And then when you are in the team environment, there is the cost component for a lot of people that is prohibitive. And there's also bad coaching. If we're looking at reasons why the U.S.'s talent pool kind of lags relative to the great men's soccer teams in the world, the average soccer knowledge of the average parent coaching their kids team is horrible. It's absolutely horrible, right? And so that's a real problem. So before you get into a team environment, there are hurdles. And after you're in a team environment at lower levels, there are hurdles. The reason why I'm leaving this, in addition to the absolute thing that you said, right? I would have left it on that principle alone. But the reason why I'm leaving this is that I do think it's getting better, right? There are more high-level academies as more pro teams form. And we talked about this in the aftermath of the USL discussion about the new Division I league coming in, about them establishing Pro Rel. We're going to see, if things go according to the USL's plans, a lot of new professional men's soccer teams in the United States. Now, it's still going to be like maybe more than a drop in a bucket. Maybe it'll be like a eighth of a cup of water in a bucket. It's still going to be a situation where there are huge cracks. And I love how you said that, Taylor. There are big cracks now, and the hope is to make them smaller, right? The hope is to make it harder for kids that want to play soccer to slip through the cracks, right? You want to make it easier for them, to say it more simply, to actually get involved in the game. And having more professional teams with higher level academies with better coaching than the average academy is going to help with that, right? And those pro teams are better able to subsidize costs, right? You don't pay to go to an MLS academy. You don't pay to go, if you're a good player, you don't pay to go to a high quality academy in the United States regardless. The hope is that more pro teams help build that culture as well, not just driving participation, but help build, at least in communities, right? We're talking about small scale stuff in cities, but if you can build communities in pockets of cities, it gets a little easier. World Cups should drive participation. I think we talked about that recently, about how maybe these World Cups help broaden the funnel, right? Maybe these are more about participation than they are about high-level changes to the sport and the leagues in the country. And U.S. Soccer is working to help drive participation too. I think this has still gone a little under-discussed. Michelle Kang the other day just donated another $25 million to U.S. Soccer. Now, this is on the women's side. I know this is about the USMNT, but I think it's relevant in a rising tide lifts all boat situation. She's now donated $55 million to U.S. Soccer to help increase all sorts of things related to the women's game. There's no way that can be anything but a good thing. I recognize that it is still not everything. There's so much work to be done in a country as large as the United States is. But I firmly believe that more kids are going to be playing soccer in 2027 than they are today, more in 2032 than they are probably in 2027. Eventually, that is going to help the United States. How much, I don't know, but it will help the U.S., so I'm leaving this one.
I think a thing that makes a couple things. I think a thing that makes America, at least historically, unique is the idea that, like, even as we're achieving a thing, we always want to be doing the next thing. It can always be better. We have to kind of be improving. I don't know if that is necessarily the case at present, but historically it was. And so I do think that with that comes this idea that, like, it's not good enough. It should be better. We could be doing this better. And I think to assume that things aren't working well in this country when it comes to soccer and youth soccer especially is fair. At the same time, to Joe's point, I would fully agree that I think we are seeing more high-level development at a younger age faster than we have ever seen before. There is more money being put into youth soccer. Again, pay-to-play being an issue there. But there are also free academies for MLS teams. There are academies connected to lower-level professional teams nowadays that didn't used to exist. And I think there is so much more connectivity, period, when it comes to American soccer and the kind of network that exists. Going back to, like, the late 90s with the Richmond Kickers, it always felt like they were sort of joining a new league every couple seasons where it was kind of being reformed and reconstituted, and you'd have a different geographic region with different connections. And it felt like you were kind of existing in a vacuum where you didn't know what else was happening around the country, and it felt very unique and local as opposed to more of a national push and a national collective push at that. So I think there is just more connectivity and more development, you then run into some of the issues that Joe has already been talking about. Like when you talk about participation but a lack of space, the obvious counterpoint to that is like America has nothing but space. And even in urban areas or in other countries in urban areas where you have a more condensed population, you have those like smaller pitches, you have five-a-side pitches all over the place where everybody can play. Which is true. You don't have those here, and it's really hard to build facilities and finance facilities like that in cities where land is at a premium. And so you consistently run into those problems that Joe has outlined, and finding solutions to those, I think, again, is a very unique sort of individual scenario solution rather than a blanket one. But with all that said, I still think the development is improving, that we're seeing, again, more younger players moving to bigger leagues and bigger clubs or making professional debuts. I think it presents us with the problem that we now have, and I'll speak to this later with a different take. I think that development has led to a sort of identity crisis with the United States. To the purpose of this question, I think if you had a U.S. team with the identity of past teams where it's against anybody who is stronger or has better talent, we're going to sit deep, we're going to defend for our lives, we're going to be physical, we're going to counterattack, we're going to make lives difficult. I think that is a path to success. I kind of think it's what South Korea did when they made their semifinal, to Ryan's point. I don't think that's what the U.S. wants to do as a soccer nation right now, and I think that's the identity crisis we're in, is we could probably be a better team doing that, but we have more talent now. Do we need to do that? And I think that sort of, we're not quite putting our feet into the playing technical, precise soccer, but we're not quite leaving the work hard, run hard identity. And that sort of dual identity, I think, is kind of in conflict right now and leads to the problems that we now face. But those problems come from better players, essentially, just better, maybe not fully to the level we need them to be.
Yeah, but isn't like Southampton sticking to their guns in the Premier League? Doesn't that give you the answer of what the US should do in terms of don't try and
we haven't been relegated yet, is my response to that. I mean, truthfully, we'll see how 2026 goes, because I think there is a realistic scenario in which the U.S. gets trounced, even in an expanded tournament, and looks poor, looks like they don't have an identity, looks like they don't really know what they're doing. And yeah, I think that probably leads to we got to go back to basics. We got to kind of come to terms with who we are and humble ourselves a little bit. I think there's also a possibility where the U.S. clicks a bit more. The key players that we need to be there are there and are fully fit, and maybe we look a little bit better than we looked in 2022. And that marginal improvement might not satisfy everybody, but I think it can show that we are marginally improving so that it's not never a semifinal, it's maybe eventually a semifinal.
Since we're dropping takes, and I don't want to miss the forest for the trees here, Taylor, because I think it's a really interesting point that you're making about the U.S. sort of being caught now in this middle ground at the senior national team level, where maybe there is this desire to play a little bit more with the ball, but there isn't quite the skill to do it really well. And that is maybe still a progression in talent from what was here before, but is not the best way to maximize results at the national team level. I think that's a fair summation of kind of what you're getting at there. I also think my take on all this is that ultimately it is a good thing what the U.S. is trying to do. Like in a very, very big picture macro sort of process, I would rather not do what the Philadelphia Union are doing. And this is top of mind because I've been thinking about that interview still. Like I would rather try to produce players who can do lots of different things instead of players who can just do, run hard, play hard, try hard kind of stuff. Ideally, you want players that can do everything. And I know I'm not breaking any ground there, but I almost want to see the U.S. work through these growing pains at the senior level and hope that there is this idea that we can develop players who can use the ball. Because if you're just developing, I'm trying to think of a good example from the past, and I'm coming up painfully short. If you're just developing like against the ball type, I mean Tyler Adams is. That's a good example from the past and the present. If you're just developing Tyler Adams is, obviously you're gonna have the most charismatic national team of all time, but you're not gonna have a great national team, I think, that can reliably win games. So I like the idea of the U.S. trying to develop players that fit a mold of using the ball a little bit more. I don't think anybody would really disagree with that, honestly. So I just wanted to say that in sort of carrying that theme forward of what you're saying. I think it helps the U.S. ultimately if they can develop players with that wide or sort of on-field ability. But the reality is they're not there yet. They're not there yet to do that at a high level. And the hope is if you can increase participation at the top of the funnel, that eventually the bottom of the funnel is going to be stronger as a result.
Yeah. So I think we probably agree that we'll leave the take that the USMNT will never get to a World Cup semi-final because, as Taylor outlined, we can't really deal in absolutes like that because we don't know what the future holds unless in the next, say, 2.5 to 3 years, the US is reduced to a Mad Max-style dystopian wasteland, in which case then we can give an absolute. Maybe.
Kind of alluding to that earlier when I was like, we don't know how long the World Cup will be in existence. Hopefully for a while. Hopefully. We'll see.
Ryan, that reality that you're painting, I think, is actually how the U.S. gets to a World Cup semifinal. Like, that's how you create the intensity and the grit that you need in your players, that they will go out there and work together. They're going to give everything. That's what we should be looking for.
Now I'm just picturing Mauricio Pochettino with a face mask screaming, "Don't let yourselves become dependent on water. It will weaken you."
The Gabriel Heinze approach. I love it.
There we go. Oh, nice bring back. There's another path as well for next summer as well, of course, which is don't let any of the nations in, which might be immigration policy by that point. Just let Mexico and Canada in, and like the island with the penguins, and then top 4, baby.
Even if we just let Mexico and Canada in, we're still not making the semifinal.
Third place game there, yeah.
Brutal.
Oh boy! On that note, thank you for that take, Troy One Kenobi. Let's break. When we come back, we'll deal with the looming spectre of Gio Reyna and calling into question the entire centre-back group of the USMNT. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. Jackson's arm has been in touch with this spicy one. The knock-on effect of Gio Reyna's World Cup antics are still being felt. I believe in team chemistry. They had it up until then. It's gone and it can't be retrieved. This makes the ceiling for this group much lower than it was in 2022. Taylor, we can get it back, can't we? Can't we?
We can get it back. Come on, baby. Here's where I am with this one. I fully expected to leave this when I first started writing out my answer. I ended up somewhat taking it. Now, I will say up front, this is a question that calls for speculation almost entirely, and it's emotional speculation at that, which is something that I know Joe especially loves. But I would say one player can definitely, absolutely destroy team chemistry. I've experienced that in multiple ways, and it is the worst. However, I think that is probably less of a thing in the professional ranks because they're professionals. It's their jobs. We don't all get to love our coworkers, even though I do, obviously, but many people do not, and they still find a way to make things work because that's your job. I also don't think it's one player's fault that the team are in the situation they're in, nor is it one player that is hurting morale only. I think it's lots of stuff. But with that said, here's
that was an
why
elite disclaimer off the top. I really enjoyed that.
I think it's important to note those things because it's really easy to be like, yeah, he's the problem. Yeah. And I think that is a massive oversimplification and not really what Jackson's arm is doing. But I do think that there is some truth
What's his leg
to
doing?
What this take. All right, so here we go. I do think Gio Reyna was undeniably a distraction in 2022 at the World Cup, and I do think it had an impact on the team. I know they said they dealt with it and they moved on, but what else are they going to say? Like, yeah, we're all still really mad about it, but we've got a game to play. They're going to come together and say, yeah, we're fine with it, and I think maybe they were fine with it moving on because they didn't think he would play much, and then Berhalter gets in trouble with some of the captains because he ends up playing him. So I think there is still some frustration there, and I have a feeling that frustration is still there. I have a feeling he is not fully trusted or particularly well-liked by at least a few of his teammates. But, and this is, again, sort of what we were talking about earlier, he is theoretically good enough in an area where we are desperate for talent. So you get that last fact, plus a new manager coming in, it means that he cannot be dropped without it being an issue. It will then be discussed, and as it was, that he didn't play. Why didn't he play? Where's Gio Reyna? We all assumed that Mauricio Pochettino was going to love this guy, but he's not starting, but he could still have an impact, and so I think we are in that cycle where I don't think he has truly turned a new leaf, turned a corner. I think he is kind of who he was, and I think his club situation is still probably pretty frustrating for him. I think to Joe's point, it's been a lot of negative press around him. It's wild to me that we've gone from everybody being like, it's an abomination that Gio Reyna isn't playing, to sort of a consensus like, yeah, we get why he's not playing now, but he's still in the team. I think there's still conflict there, and so I do think that can just create an awkwardness. It can create a weirdness in the camp, that you don't quite know how to interact with the guy, but he's there, and you don't want to leave him out, but you don't want clicks to form, and I do think that it can disrupt the squad harmony that has been a centerpiece of U.S. men's national teams very much previously and very much consistently, and that's been a hallmark of how that team pulls together and how they're able to achieve things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to achieve. And so I think having little disruptions can add up to major disruptions in team chemistry.
Joe, what say you?
I mean, I agree, I think, with everything you said there, Taylor. I am still leaving this question. And maybe it's just the severity of the way it's worded that doesn't sit all the way well with me. But that's the nature of the beast. So I'm not begrudging Jackson's arm that at all. I'm leaving this because I think there's certainly room to get it back. And I'm not really sure that it's gone in the first place. Where I do agree with Jackson's arm is that there has been a clear drop-off, I think, in this team, or at least there hasn't been a progression, right? Whether it was the Gio incident and still the aftermath of that, whether it was the Berhalter rehire, although it seems like that's what the players wanted by and large, so there's some strangeness there. The Copa America being a frustrating experience, another new coach coming in, whether it's one of those things or the thing that I feel like has played the largest part in the U.S.'s struggle since 22 is the club situations not being especially ideal for players. This is not an exhaustive list, but since the World Cup, the following players have all spent time injured, like a significant amount of time injured. Tyler Adams, Serginho Dest, Ricardo Pepi, Faloran Balogun, all of those guys. There's more as well. And then you think about club situations in terms of where these guys are actually playing on the field. You cannot make an argument. I don't think you can make a compelling argument that Weston McKennie or Yunus Musa have been in good spots for their clubs on a regular basis since the World Cup. So those are 6 key players for the United States. Those are 6 guys that could reasonably start a World Cup game for the United States, and none of them have been in ideal club situations. I think that's a real problem. And when you think about that and how clearly I can sort of grasp that in my head, and how little speculation I think is involved there compared to the ongoing fallout or lack thereof, we don't know, of the Gio Reyna situation, especially when the Gio thing, as was reported at the time, and a lot of folks did great work on this, it very much seemed like a Gio Reyna versus the world type of situation inside that U.S. locker room. It wasn't like multiple factions were being created. It was pretty hard, I think, to side with Gio Reyna in that whole discussion, despite my best efforts. So I'll
never forget, Joe, that video of them coming back from the draw against England or the win, where like they're all celebrating and you just see him sort of like sullenly walking in the background. And it doesn't seem like he was maybe vibing with any other teammates.
And the reporting was that DeAndre Yedlin and nice. Yeah, just absolutely devastated that he had to play against his home nation. The reporting at the time was that DeAndre Yedlin and Aaron Long had sort of taken him aside and talked to him, and that multiple other people had talked to him. So it seemed like a us versus you kind of thing. And if anything, I would sort of think that would almost galvanize a group of like, we have to play so well that this guy can't get into the 11. Like if we're playing well, it sort of has to be us. And the World Cup showing on the whole was pretty good, actually. Like it wasn't amazing, but it was pretty good overall. The U.S. did some good stuff. They made it to the round of 16. In general, I think they checked boxes at that tournament. And shouldn't they have been feeling that Gio Reyna shock then too? So I don't know. It's hard for me to draw this connection in a way that I am fully convinced by. But at the end of the day, I do still agree with what you're saying, Taylor. This kind of thing can and does impact team chemistry, but I certainly don't think it's gone and can't come back. Yeah. And I really think there are probably other larger factors at play here as well.
I'm glad you said all that, Joe, because I think it helps me like better articulate that I think Reyna is part of the chemistry problem, but I think my speculation is that the larger issue, has there ever been as much pressure on a U.S. men's national team as there is at present? Like with the talent we have, the golden generation headlines, which don't get me started, but like the perception that this is the most talented group we've had, that we're hosting a World Cup at home, that we have Mauricio Pochettino as a manager. There are all of these reasons why there is increased spotlight on the national team. And I think historically, players kind of saw playing for the U.S. as like a retreat from club football, a retreat from the pressures of everyday club soccer, and you go and play with a group of guys who are all kind of they're having a good time. And not to say that it's like, yeah, we're just partying and then we play, but it was always really good vibes in the locker room, and it's been a consistent aspect of the national team. People discount this. People think I'm silly for saying this sometimes because, like, yeah, every team has this. Every team has chemistry. Like, it is a hallmark of U.S. national teams that it is a fun team to be around, a fun team to be in, that you have just a much less serious, much less self-serious, way fewer cliques than you have in other national teams because you have club rivalries and historical rivalries that bleed into national teams. And I just think it's been easier to play for the United States in past iterations, in past generations, than it is right now. And so if you're leaving a club situation, to Joe's point, where you're not playing or you're on the outs with the coach or you haven't been played in the right position, and you're going into a situation that instead of being a sort of like, oh, well, I get to see all my buddies and we'll kick around and get a win over Panama, and now it's like, you have to win everything and you must possess the ball, and if we don't, what will happen to soccer? Like, there's just an intensity there that I think you probably can't escape whether you're playing for your club or your country. And I have to believe that has an impact on team chemistry. And then when other little things get added into that one, I think the situation gets stickier faster.
Yeah. I think for me, once again, taking a holistic view of this take, like, soccer is cyclical. International soccer is cyclical. You can look at what happened to Germany between 2004 and 2014. There was a pretty big shift on and off the field there. So to say that chemistry is gone and can't be retrieved, I think we see all the time how that's not necessarily true outside of the US.
Yeah.
So,
Do you know what I think would help, Ryan? Just stop calling up any of our center backs, to the point of the next question. That should help with team chemistry, right? Just drop everybody and see what happens.
well, Taylor, that cues us up nicely for the next question. Thank you, Jackson Zahn, for that one. This take comes from Shreyas, courtesy of our Discord, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. Poch should call up an entirely new centre-back group in June, meaning no player from the March camp would come back. Joe, this is quite a shift, quite a transition, I would say, in the centre-back grouping. If this were to be done, do you take it? Do you leave it?
So before I made my decision on this, I tried to think about what this would do, right? Like, what is this gain the U.S.? What is it risk to the U.S.?
Joe has learned the art of the preamble, by the way.
Yeah, right. The primary thing this would gain the U.S. is a chance to look at a center back who might be able to impress and add something to the group ahead of 2026, right? And in the World Cup. I think that's pretty clear, right? So you hope you get a look at 2-4 new guys over the course of 2 games, and you hope that is a really useful exercise. Fundamentally, though, I just don't think that those players exist in the pool that are going to help the United States. So I'm leaving this, and I'm leaving it pretty hard. I think I stated my case, and I was a little surprised, not to drudge up Graham's victory, because I'm not attempting to give Graham credit because he's not here. Boom. But from that draft episode we did, I drafted, Richards and McKenzie, or Ream and McKenzie? I don't know, two of those 3 guys. Honestly, I do not remember. And I was talking about on that
Richards
show how
and
I think
McKenzie,
it's...
was
there
you.
we go. I think it's pretty clear that those are the 3 best center backs in the pool. And was a little surprised that more people didn't agree with that, which means I could be quite wrong about that. Yeah, Taylor's
This is me waving that I don't agree.
I see nothing that points me in any other direction than that. But even if you don't concede that point, which I think you should, but even if you don't, then like, who are you calling in? So you don't get to call in Ream, Richards, McKenzie, CCV, or Trusty, right? I could take or leave those last 2 guys. But really, then you are calling in who? Walker Zimmerman?
You call in Trusty. I had him on my list, right? Because he was called in but not involved because he has to drop out due to injury. So he doesn't play. So I'm including him.
Okay, all right, fine. You can call in Trusty then, I guess. You can call in Zimmerman.
Changes everything.
Yeah, changes everything. You can call in Zimmerman, Miles Robinson, Banks, and like George Campbell.
Leonard Maloney.
I mean, Leonard Maloney's not a... I don't know. Whatever, right?
Now just annoying Joe.
Like, does this do anything for anybody? Like, Taylor, does
That's
this
the
do anything
problem.
for you? I'm leaving this. Does this do anything?
It does not. And that is the problem. I left this as well. Mine was close. I was not nearly as wide of a margin as yours, Joe, because I think, like, when it comes to the talent, like, you could do that, and I think it would be interesting, to your point, to see, like, I don't know, could Austin Trusty and Walker Zimmerman look like a good center back pairing? Maybe. I don't think it's likely, but I think the issue with the center backs, like, as a whole, to your point, Joe, is like, yeah, Ream is probably the best center back, but there are obvious drawbacks to having him start for the U.S. Chris Richards, in my opinion, has deficiencies in his game that aren't quite obvious, but I think any one of them, I'm not going to be like, yeah, that guy's head and shoulders above everybody, because they all have drawbacks to their game. And so I think you could call up a whole new collection of players and see maybe if any of them justify continued selection. The only other one I had on the list, Joe, and again, it's sort of a loophole, is maybe Joe Scally, to lead to another take we're going to get later on. He was, but if you're calling him in as a center back, he wasn't called as a center back before.
Ooh.
No, I mean, that's the thing, is like, there's loopholes in there, there's different players, but ultimately I think the reason why I left this is because even if it is maybe not quite as clear cut of a talent divide as Joe might feel it is, there is the issue of you are dropping a lot of players who could then be key players ahead of a World Cup that is not far away at this point. And so I think that further erodes chemistry, because then you kind of send a message that, like, any of you can be dropped at any moment, which theoretically could be good because then everybody feels like they have to fight. But it also means that, like, it's very much a what have you done for me lately mentality, and everybody is going to feel like one bad pass, one mistake, and I'm done. I'm going to be out of favor. I'm not going to be involved. And that's where I think Berhalter was very reliable in, even if you make mistakes, I'm going to keep calling you because I know what you can bring and I know the kind of strengths that you're bringing into this team. I would say he erred too far in that direction, but I think there's a middle ground between dropping everybody and calling everybody right back and being like, it's okay, we'll figure it out. So I think for how disruptive it could be to team chemistry and to morale and just to then trying to get players back in your good graces if you end up needing to call Chris Richards or Tim Ream or have them start in a World Cup, I just think that is the other major drawback to this one for me.
And even in a vacuum, right? I agreed on all of that. I think this would pose some pretty significant internal challenges inside the team. Even in a vacuum where you don't have to worry about any of those things and everybody's just a robot that you bring in. Poch called in Zimmerman, Miles Robinson, Jalen Neal, and George Campbell in the January camp. None of those dudes got the call in March, which is not to say that Pochettino is infallible, but we've kind of already done this in a situation where you don't have to worry about any of the chemistry concerns because those other guys were not available for that window. And so it's the perfect situation to run this exact experiment, and those guys didn't make it back. So... Yeah, I'm leaving this one.
I think it's in my opinion why he stresses the idea of everyone has to be adaptable, everybody has to respond to instruction in training. And reading between the lines on that one, my assumption is in that January camp he was like, all right, well, you center backs all do certain things that you like to do, and maybe you're not responding the way I would like. So let's see who else is out there, and maybe that is what he did in March.
All right, feels like we're in a forest right now. A lot of leaves so far in this episode. Right, bit of
I
fun.
had a take, didn't I?
Did you have
Somewhere
a
in
take?
there. I marginally took the Gio Reyna one. We'll see if we get more takes soon.
Feels like we're in a Ridley Scott movie, Taylor. Not very many takes so far. Bit of movie making fun for you there as well.
Does he do a lot of takes?
He does very few, famously.
Oh, it's the other way. Okay, good to know. All right.
Yeah, there you go.
It's him and Clint Eastwood?
One and dones.
Exactly. Who will then just put in horrifically acted scenes because you know what? We got it. That's all we need. Who cares about acting or emotional range?
That's it indeed. All right, why don't we take one more quick break? When we come back, more centre-back talk and much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to USMNT Weekly. Let's try and get some takes in this segment. Here we go, John Adams. Once Sergio Dest is back with the USMNT, Joe Scally should get a look at centre-back.
Take it.
Take.
There it is.
There we go.
Take it too.
Two takes.
Two takes.
Excuse my ignorance here. Has he played at centre-back before?
I mean, I don't know if he's been listed as a center back. In the we move to a 3-2-5 in possession, he stays back oftentimes and functions as a center back. To Joe's positions don't matter point, or positions are much more theoretical than we like to believe. So in that way, yes, he's played center back. I don't know if he's ever just listed straight up as a center back. But I think he's been good enough in defense. He's confident enough on the ball, and he can pass well enough. As evidenced by the last question, I don't think it's the strongest position group, so I'd be down to see what someone else can do. But the conditionals in every single thing I have said so far is why my original answer was, I am taking this unless Joe makes a compelling counter-argument, which it doesn't sound like he will.
No, I don't think I will. I mostly have word for word what you said, especially that last line about the center back pool isn't strong. Why not give him a look? That's kind of where I come down on this, so I am intrigued about this whole situation.
Yeah.
The one thing that I am not so sure about with what you said, Taylor, is his ability to pass well enough. I recognize that was not this crazy getting out over your skis compliment, because it really wasn't.
No, I think it's a fair point. Yeah.
I am worried about his distribution as a center back in possession. That's one of the two things I'm worried about here. But to stick with that for a second, I just don't envision him breaking lines often at all.
That's
right?
fair.
So I went and looked at the numbers and also was thinking about Joe Scally as a player. He's in the 15th, 1-5 percentile among Bundesliga fullbacks in progressive passes per 90 minutes at 2.45. And this tracks, right, with what we know about Joe Scally. He doesn't really advance the ball. He can progress on the dribble a little bit better. He's not going to drive at defenders 1v1, which is fine. You don't really need to do that as a center back in either a 2 or a 3. But really, he doesn't pass the ball forward very much. And he's still a young player. In a positional switch, maybe that could change. So again, why not? I'm not opposed to this. But that's a concern. My other concern here is I've never seen him defend as a center back in a 2 before, right? So when he plays as a center back in a 3, which he has done for club, he hasn't really done that in every phase of the U.S., which you've already specified well, Taylor. It is a different feel to defend as a center back in a pairing versus in a trio. Your job, in a lot of respects, is harder. And we don't have the evidence for what that looks like. And I'm a little concerned. Scally is not a physically dominant player. He's not the fastest guy. He's not the strongest guy. He's not the tallest guy.
You are taking this, yes?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If that doesn't tell you how I feel about the center back pool, I don't know what will. And also, I hope this also communicates like Joe Scally is not really an asset for the U.S. at fullback in a lot of games. Like I think he's a talented player in that he is a very useful defender in a three or as a fullback. He just offers you absolutely nothing in the final third. Nothing. Like he is a net negative whenever you ask him to get into the attack. And that's a problem. And I think there's a chance that maybe he is a slight upgrade over somebody at center back if he can adapt a little bit. At the very least, it wouldn't hurt. I don't think it would hurt seeing this in like a 30-minute late sub appearance in a friendly or something like that. But Dest should be eating those minutes of fullback. If one thing has become clear to me since he's been injured and Scally's been playing in that role, Dest is the number one guy by a sizable margin in almost every game at that right back spot.
That is Serginho's destiny, if you will.
Here all week?
Try to veal.
Good.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much, John Adams. I think we've covered a couple of takes on that one. Let's get to Sir Kenneth of Sidon. K-Sides, back in touch. While this is undoubtedly the most talented US team that has ever been, their skill sets do not just fit all that well together. I'm trying to read this as grammatically well as I can. Sorry, I messed it up. While this is undoubtedly the most talented US pool there's ever been, their skill sets just don't fit all that well together as a collective, with many of their stylistic and positional strengths not aligning. What do we think? We've got some clashes of style here, Taylor. What do we think for K-Sides' take?
100%. I'm taking this. And I think it was more evident to me when we did that draft, where like with the way I wanted my team to play, the way I thought this U.S. team could play, there are then immediate problems with certain players not really fitting in stylistically, in my opinion. An example of that is Tim Weah, who I think is the out-and-out obvious best choice to be a like right winger / right attacker for the United States. But if you have Serginho Dest in there and you want to maybe have a more like possession-oriented approach, I don't feel like Tim Weah is always particularly good at breaking down compact defenses, at taking people on. I think he's very good at running in behind, about making sort of aggressive runs and then taking on a single defender against more compact teams. I'm not sure he shines, but you kind of have to have him in the team because he is head and shoulders above the other options there. And I think that's kind of where we start to run into problems. And it's not a Tim Weah problem, but it's a team-wide problem, in my opinion, that you have center backs who are very good defensively, very good in the air, can like lead a well-organized defense and can bunker really well. But if you ask them to then kind of confidently step out and play the ball, there are significantly fewer of them. But that is a thing that we want this team to do, especially against teams that are defending deeper. And so I think you really quickly run into this identity problem of we are a team that is much more comfortable defending and sitting off and playing physical and frustrating and then getting a smash and grab goal and then opening up from there once you're up 1-0. But we have players that also want to have more possession and have more possession at club level, or have more creativity in the attack, or flood numbers more forward, and so you have more attacking options. And I think you just have different players from different club backgrounds where they do different things and are asked to do different things and play different stylistically, and even across leagues. You have just different approaches to football in different leagues that when you then bring all those players together, again, I think it speaks to Pochettino talking about how we have to be adaptable, about how we have to respond, because if you're coming in with a clear idea of what we do at club, but I need you to be my right winger who does this, this, and this, you have to be able to kind of respond to that. And I'm not sure we have players who can do that at present. And so I think we are fast approaching a time where if Pochettino, after the next window, said, you know what, we're going to be a defensive team that fights really hard for everything, I wouldn't hate that. I would be sad that that's kind of the evaluation of the talent as it stands right now. But it is at least an admission of we are not where we need to be, so we have to play a way that allows us to survive.
I kind of can't believe I'm going to be the old head amongst our trio today. Are we just glossing over this is undoubtedly the most talented the U.S. has ever been take that's baked into this macro take? Because I'm leaving that. At least I'm leaving it on the undoubted part. Maybe that's a technicality here. It's not undoubted, is it? I mean, I think about 2014, Clint Dempsey, Jermaine Jones, Michael Bradley, sort of close to his peak, Kyle Beckerman, certainly the center backs of that team. I think we'd all feel a bit better leading this team in Jeff Cameron and Matt Beasler. Tim Howard in goal is certainly an upgrade over what the U.S. had. I don't know. I'm just not sold that this is, just because it's Badge FC, that this is the most talented. The U.S., maybe this group is the most talented, but it's not the best. or it's not undoubtedly the best. I don't know where to draw the line here, but I'm certainly quibbling with that bit of the question and surprised that I'm the first to do so. As far as the second and real part of this,
I think I'm the only other one who could, Joe. So
What's
shots
that?
fired is what I'm hearing.
Oh.
I think I'm the only other person who could.
No,
quibble
I
with
mean
that one.
Ryan's old, right?
All right,
I mean,
all right.
old enough.
Excuse me?
Sorry, what? Smash the
And Ryan
subscribe button.
catches a stray. All right. Cool.
I am taking the players don't fit together take.
Yeah.
Although maybe for a slightly different reason. Although maybe not. I don't know. I was trying to think about how these players fit into different buckets. And I think about the combative players in the U.S. pool. Tyler Adams, Jedi Robinson, Weston McKennie probably fits more in that group in a general sense than the more creative guys. Serginho Dest, the Luna, Reyna, Hydra, whatever is happening there. Christian Pulisic probably fits in that category, although imperfectly. Tim Weah, I would have more on the creative side, but I hear where you're coming from, Taylor. I think that was a good description of his game. And then you kind of have everybody else where I'm not really exactly sure where to put them as far as their buckets go. The U.S. just doesn't have a well-rounded possession squad, which I think you were getting at, Taylor. I also don't think the U.S. has a murder ball squad. Where you think about Serginho Dest, and I was trying to hedge a little bit in the Joe Scally bit. I talked about how Dest is the number one in almost every game. If the U.S. has Kylian Mbappe on that left wing, I'm not like in love with Serginho Dest playing in that spot. Right? He's not a guy that is gonna like really buckle down. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
Joe, what is a murder ball squad?
Yeah, good question. So I'm thinking about sitting deep, suffering, or like trying to really be combative and like just something that is emphasizing the defensive principles of the game rather than going out there and like really trying to be the protagonist on the ball. Like forget the pretty possession stuff.
Atletico Madrid.
Yeah, Atletico Madrid or some of the Bielsa stuff. I can see that here. Like a team that's going to be combative and that you're going to hate to play against for whatever reason that is. They're defensively going to make your life hell, basically. I don't think Dest really fits that. Pulisic doesn't seem to show a ton of defensive work with the United States. So I agree with this idea that the U.S. pool doesn't fit together all that well. The reason for that, I think, is not unique to the United States. I think the U.S. squad not fitting all that well together is mostly a subject of them missing talent, right? Teams with okay or maybe good talent pools like the U.S., they don't have the luxury of finding 18 guys or 11 guys, if we want to be even smaller, that can all play in the same way with skills that complement each other. That's rare. Spain can do it. The U.S. cannot do that. And that goes for most national teams on the planet where you have to make compromises. And the U.S. has been trying to figure out what compromises to make stylistically. And it's a challenge because when you don't have elite talent and the U.S. doesn't, it's really, really hard to do what the Spains of the world, maybe Germany does this fairly well. There's a few teams that I think do a good job of having like a very clear and obvious style that fits the players well. But the U.S. is not in a position where any style they pick is going to be a perfect fit. That's just the reality of the pool.
Okay. So are you taking this one, Joe?
Oh, yeah, good. I'm taking the players don't fit together. I'm leaving this is the most talented the U.S. has ever been by a mile.
It's such a confusing thing, that point, Joe. Because I think I agree with you about 2014, that squad has so much talent in it and such an identity. And at the same time, by the players' own admission, the manager at the time did not give them any sort of clear identity or style of play, that it was up to the players to decide how we're going to play and what's going to work for us, which it then makes me wonder if that's just like when you have that situation, is it just like stripped down to the bare bones, here are the basic things that we need to do, and then we're all kind of accountable to each other? Is that how you get that kind of collective response? Because I agree with you that team, when you kind of list it out the way you did, is probably the more talented team, at least in those specific areas you mentioned. But then Jurgen Klinsmann being a manager that the players themselves were like, yeah, he didn't really bring anything. It makes it much more of a conundrum and a confusing situation in my brain.
Well, I'm not even, and I think we can set all the manager stuff aside for the question of like which team is talented, right? Like I wasn't trying to bring Klinsmann versus Pochettino into the equation. I think we'd all take Pochettino. But I'm just thinking about how it's really easy to get sucked into, Weston McKennie plays for Juventus.
Oh, yeah.
Or, wow, Yunus Musa plays for Milan. Right? Like, it's so easy to think, these guys are so clearly more talented. And they might be. The thing I'm quibbling with and the reason why I left that specific part of this take is that I don't think it's obvious at all that this group is like way better or way more talented than groups of the past.
Yeah, I think where my brain goes then, and that's a valid point, is just like, well, if you know something that was like, seemed like it was working okay, well, let's look at that and use that as a blueprint. But there's no way I am using a 2014 team as a blueprint for what this team should be, because that team was dysfunctional and kind of nonsensical and dropped one of their best players. So it's an odd one where we don't maybe have a past blueprint to help us navigate a tricky situation.
Yarp.
Yarp, indeed. So, Kenneth aside, and thank you very much indeed for your hot take. One more for this episode. Let's squeeze in a quickie from Roger Dawn. Typical friendlies with 5 subs should be replaced with 2 60-minute games with different rosters and only 1 or 2 subs. So a fundamental change, Joe, to the format of friendlies for the US here. What do we think? Shorter games with less subs, but more of them.
Oh, I want to take it so bad because it's a creative idea. I'm going to leave it. I have down in my notes take, and I have why not? We learn different stuff, and we get this in preseason. All those things are true. Does this really make it better? I don't know. I'm not too sure. I think it's probably not worth deviating from all the other formats of all the competitive games if it's not for fitness reasons, and that's why they do it in preseason. Right, as players don't have the legs to go safely, to go a like real 90-minute game or even a 75-minute game with a sub for the last 15 or whatever it is. They will do multiple 60-minute games or 3 45-minute games or something along those lines to help ramp players back up for the actual season when games matter. That I understand. This feels like a not super... I don't know what this is fixing, ultimately. Like, I'm not really sure what this is accomplishing. Taylor, do you have ideas here?
I do.
Okay, please.
And I think I am taking it, though I agree with your consternation, Joe, because I think there would be a strong preseason friendly vibe to this, even if we're talking about friendlies to begin with. But when you're shortening it up, it feels kind of like an exhibition or something like that. But I do get annoyed in friendlies when you have to discount everything that's happening once substitutions start to get made. Because so often when we're talking about U.S. friendlies, once you reach like the 65th minute and you start getting like 3 and 4 changes, it's just a different team, and you don't really know how much you're actually gaining from that point. Let's say, for example, we want to see how Haji Wright looks as a replacement for Christian Pulisic. Can he do some of the things or do enough of a job that if we need someone to come in for 20 minutes, he can get it done? But if we're also worrying about load management and minutes management and potential injuries, then in that same friendly, if when you're bringing on Haji Wright, you're bringing off Jedi Robinson and you're bringing on DeJuan Jones or Max Arfston, if Wright looks poor, can we really say that's entirely on him if he doesn't have Jedi Robinson behind him? That's where I start to get frustrated with friendlies. And so I think if you did this as a sort of every now and then approach, where like we're calling a bunch of players into camp and you're going to play the same opponent. I think the one I threw out before we started recording was like Japan. If you bring in Japan and they have a larger squad, and maybe you made it a doubleheader, like on a Friday night, like one team is playing for 60 minutes, and then on Saturday night, the next team is playing for 60 minutes, and you get an opportunity to kind of chop and change and see what sort of works for you. And so maybe that's Haji Wright starts with Jedi Robinson, and you can see how they combine. But maybe Christian Pulisic starts with DeJuan Jones, and you see what the drop-off is there, and can they function as a unit? And it gives you more opportunity to experiment in ways that I think would be useful rather than sort of swapping players out in the 70th minute when kind of people have eased off the gas because it's a friendly and there's less to play for and there's already a bunch of change. I think that is where I could see some value to this.
Hear me out. Doubleheader on the same night, 60-minute game, Will Smith half-time, half-game show, second 60-minute game against a different opponent.
Sold.
Yeah?
100%
on the Will Smith part, right?
The Will Smith part is the thing that's making me take this, right? The rest, I'm not convinced otherwise, but if you get Will Smith, I'm in, man.
Singing 90s songs.
That was my question. What is he slapping people at halftime? Is he just like sitting in a chair and crying? What is that halftime show?
It'll be CONCACAF Nations League style. Here's Men in Black and Wild Wild West, those songs you heard 25 years ago.
And getting jiggy with it. Thank you very much. He did
with
get jiggy with it, lest we forget. Yes.
With the dance. Yeah, very good.
What a time to be alive,
If you need
Joe,
a lift,
sorry
who's a
you
kid
missed
in
it.
the ride? Who else? Will Smith. Living that life, some consider a myth. Rocket South Street to 125th. When you see me, give it to me nice and easy. So, I can go all day. I can go all day on that one. I know, and I will on a different pitch.
I picture Ryan running into a present-day rapper and being like, I love rap. Will Smith, the best. And just seeing how that conversation plays out from there.
Have you heard the Willennium?
Fun.
It's wonderful.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Woo, man.
All right, so we take it or leave it.
I wish he still had the policy of getting to sing one song in every single one of his movies. Like the King Henry, the Williams sisters movie would be terrific with him rapping halfway through. I would very much enjoy that. And then
the
slapping
Independence
Chris
Day
Rock.
song? I don't remember that one.
What's that?
The Independence Day song. What was that?
It's Welcome to Earth, and then it goes from there. No, there wasn't actually one, but there should have
Bit Men
been.
in Black adjacent.
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah.
A bit.
Are we taking or leaving
I
Roger
took it.
Dawn's
I took it.
idea?
I
I'm still leaving
heroically
it.
took it at that.
I wish I was as heroic as Taylor, but I'm leaving this one.
Very good. Don't we all, Joe? Don't we all wish that? Listener, thank you very much for joining us on USMNT Weekly and for providing your hot takes. If you want more, and I'm sure you do, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show for all our bonus content. But for now, from my fellow old head, as we're now called, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much.
Hello. I feel like an old head every day, so thank you for that, Ryan, and thank you, Joe, for the designation.
I was the old head. I said I was the old head, not you guys.
Actually, I think you said Ryan was an old head. I don't think you.
Well, I
assigned
said
me that
Ryan.
one.
I said Ryan was old enough to be an old head. I was pointing out that I was the one with the old head-esque take on that episode.
All right, young buck.
Is that the opposite of old
I
head?
believe so.
I like it.
Or a
That's
whippersnapper.
canon. Very good. All right, thanks, Joe, whatever. Listener, thank you very much for joining us on this episode. We'll be back on the feed very shortly indeed, but for now, bye!